From The Australian, here's what's on the front. I'm Claire Harvey. It's Thursday, November 13, 2025. Donald Trump says he'll sue the BBC for $1 billion. And the UK public broadcaster's two most senior executives have left their jobs in the wash-up from a drama that's part of a pattern. The US president suing news organisations for what he says is unfair and selective reporting. So, what exactly did the BBC do to enrage Trump? And should Australia's own ABC be worried? James Madden is The Australian's media editor and is joining me to talk about the threat that Donald Trump has made to sue the BBC. James, Donald Trump has given the BBC a deadline of Friday to apologise and give him some money, or he's going to launch a legal suit in his home state of Florida. This is all about the BBC selectively editing a speech that Trump made in Washington, D.C. on January 6, 2021, to a crowd of people, some of whom later marched down to the Capitol and staged a riot. What's the essence of Trump's problem with what the BBC did?
Donald Trump is arguing that he's been defamed by the BBC because the Panorama program effectively characterised his remarks as a call to arms to the assembled crowd to march on the Capitol and behave in a violent manner. The remarks that Trump made on that day were misrepresented by the program, which ran two separate remarks which were made 50 minutes apart and ran them into one, making it appear that he said, and I'm paraphrasing, "Let's all march down to the Capitol and fight."
And what they missed in that edit was something that Trump said in the middle of the speech, which was urging the crowd to be patriotic and to be peaceful. Here's what the BBC aired.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
Here's what Trump actually said. This is from the raw footage. You'll hear there's a slight digital glitch, but we haven't edited this at all. It's the full speech as aired on American TV live that day.
And after this, we're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you. We're going to walk down. We're going to walk down anyone you want, but I think right here we're going to walk down to the Capitol. And we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women, and we're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them, because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong. We have come to demand that Congress do the right thing and only count the electors who have been lawfully slated. I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. Today we will see whether Republicans stand strong.
More than 50 minutes later, in the original speech, Trump said this.
Something's wrong here. Something's really wrong. Can't have happened. And we fight. We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. Our exciting adventures and boldest endeavors have not yet begun. My fellow Americans, for our movement, for our children, and for our beloved country. And I say this, despite all that's happened, the best is yet to come.
So the BBC cut out the line about brave senators and congressmen and women. It put the line from the very end of the speech about fighting like hell right after the line from the beginning of the speech about marching to the Capitol. And it also didn't include Trump's warning to the crowd to be peaceful. James, I think you could make a pretty good argument that many of the people who rioted at the Capitol were Donald Trump supporters. They were mobilised by Donald Trump's complaints about Mike Pence and about the election having been stolen. This feels like the BBC has tripped itself up in doing something that they didn't need to do. They could have just played the speech as it was.
That's exactly right. And the speech history shows the speech has been shown endlessly over the years, and there's still a stain on the way Donald Trump conducted himself on that day. But in a way, it's a separate issue to what we're talking about right now, which is that the BBC, the public broadcaster in Great Britain, egregiously misrepresented the words of the sitting US president to make it look like he specifically called for acts of violence on that day, when in fact it was far more nuanced than that.
Trump's saying he wants $1 billion from the BBC. He's given them this deadline of Friday. But I wonder if the BBC is going to do what a couple of other media companies have done under similar threats. Paramount Global and ABC News in the United States both paid him around $15 million to settle claims before they got to court. Trump's also threatened to sue various other media outlets, including divisions of News Corp, which we both work for. What would you think the BBC will do now? Give him some money? Hope it'll go away? Or can they not do that, given they're a public broadcaster?
As it stands, they're in a hopeless bargaining position, Claire. I mean, they have admitted fault on this. There's no black and white here. The BBC is in the wrong. They failed to meet their own editorial benchmarks, and there's no question they characterised Donald Trump as an agitator of public violence. I would think it's most likely that they'll have to, as you say, offer some kind of financial settlement in the hope that Trump will drop the action, move on, and then the BBC can regroup and move forward. But they're in the wrong.
The editing of this speech came to the president's attention really because of a dossier published by The Telegraph in the UK, which revealed not only this editing, but also a couple of other issues going on at the BBC. One was what the dossier said was biased reporting of the Israel-Gaza conflict, including a documentary which turned out to have featured, without disclosure, the son of a Hamas official, and their coverage of trans issues. Something that wasn't included in the dossier but has received a lot of attention was newsreader Martine Croxall being slapped over the hand by the BBC for the way she corrected a headline that had been written for her by trans people. Let's hear that.
Hygiene and Tropical Medicine has released research which says that nearly 600 heat-related deaths are expected in the UK. Malcolm Mystery, who was involved in the research, says that the aged, pregnant people, women, and those with pre-existing health conditions need to take precautions.
When she said the word people, Martine Croxall kind of widened her eyes and made it clear from her facial expression that she thought this was ridiculous. That's what she's in trouble for. It seems ludicrous that the BBC is in this place, doesn't it?
It does. And in a way, the Croxall matter was symptomatic of a whole range of concerns both within and outside the BBC about the direction of the broadcaster. The overarching problem really is the perception that there is institutional bias at the BBC and that the BBC indeed has been captured by, for want of a better word, a number of activists who work within the BBC. The idea that a journalist could be disciplined for using the word women rather than pregnant people does seem utterly absurd, but perhaps within the BBC it's not as strange as you might think. There is also accusations, and have been for a while, of the issue of groupthink within the BBC, and that's to say that possibly a minority of powerful people within that organisation dictate what's acceptable and what's not. When you think of the BBC and its obligations to the wider British public, the idea that a few privileged people within the organisation basically can be the arbiters of what's right and what's wrong is a pretty dire situation.
That brings us to the ABC, which in 2021 on the Four Corners program aired a version of that same speech by Donald Trump, the January 6, 2021 speech. But they had a slightly different edit. Let's hear what Four Corners put to air.
And after this, we're going to walk down and I'll be there with you. Because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength and you have to be strong.
So what's missing there is the line about supporting brave senators and congressmen and women. This is that line from the original speech.
And after this, we're going to walk down and I'll be there with you. We're going to walk down. We're going to walk down anyone you want, but I think right here we're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
What's your take on what the ABC did here and whether it's any different from what the BBC did?
I think Four Corners has got some pretty serious questions to answer here. In the past few days, they have publicly stated that they defend the journalism of Sarah Ferguson, who was the reporter who worked on that story, and they have argued that they have reviewed the program, it's fine as it stands. However, what they did is not terribly different to what the BBC did. Basically, the ABC doctored footage to misrepresent what Trump was saying on that day. Now, you can get into the semantics of whether or not the clip they used was not as bad as what the BBC put to air, but it's the same problem. Someone within the ABC decided to clip up a speech to fit a particular narrative, a narrative that was damaging or more damaging to Trump. And if we're in the business of truth, and the media is, then what the ABC put to air wasn't the truth.
Coming up, the new defamation landscape Donald Trump has created for the ABC and all media. There was another instance where the ABC was accused of selectively editing footage, and that's in relation to Australian troops in Afghanistan. This is a promo for a report about allegations of war crimes. The ABC's admitted included the insertion of gunshot sounds that were not present in the original recording. One of the people concerned in that matter was Heston Russell, a former commando who sued the ABC for defamation successfully. He's very agitated about it. But the ABC, despite having admitted that this happened, really hasn't faced any consequences, have they?
Not really. They apologised over the Heston Russell matter. The apology and their claim that the inserted gunshots was inadvertent rather than deliberate somewhat underplays the seriousness of what they did. I mean, this was on their flagship current affairs program, Four Corners. Somebody had to be responsible for inserting gunshot audio. It doesn't happen by itself or accidentally, just as the clip-up of the Trump speech doesn't happen by accident.
The implication from the ABC in the Heston Russell gunshot matter was that somebody junior had done this, sort of a well-meaning editor, you presume, making a promo, has thought that this would sound better with a few more gunshots in it. And it seems that they've got themselves into a similar kind of pickle with a doctored image of the front page of The Australian now. What's that about?
Well, on the Insiders program on Sunday, Claire, they doctored a front page of The Australian newspaper in a bid to, I suppose, poke fun at a Liberal politician, Jane Hume. If you can believe this, the defence for doctoring The Australian to make a joke at the expense of a Conservative politician was that it was satire. That only really flies if the satire is easily detectable, which it wasn't. And you also have to question why a serious program like Insiders, which, let's be honest, is not fronted by comedians, is attempting satire anyway.
I can't recall a president of the United States who's quite as lawsuit happy as Donald Trump. Is this, James, a new reality that we need to get used to here, where I think once we might have thought in Australia that we're so far away from international affairs that the likelihood of getting sued by a foreign politician was very low?
Well, possibly that might have previously been the case, but in this brave new digital world, in a sense, all bets are off. I mean, with the BBC example, Donald Trump was apparently unaware of this till it was brought to his attention recently, but that particular Panorama program virtually got no play in the US, and it was only until the recent leak to the Telegraph newspaper about the memo that the issue surfaced. So, you know, it may well have stayed hidden forevermore, but it's also an indication that it doesn't take much for a damaging, potentially defamatory piece of journalism to be uncovered and for it to be seized upon by whomever.
James Madden is media editor of The Australian. You can check out James's reporting and all the nation's best news right now at theaustralian.com.au.